In the dark, she lifted a lamp in one hand and a knife in the other, and leaned over the sleeping monster she had been told to kill. The light touched his face, and her heart stopped. This is the oldest Beauty and the Beast ever told, and the only Greek love story whose heroine's name means, quite simply, the soul. Her name was Psyche. Psyche was the youngest of three princesses, and where her sisters were merely beautiful, hers was a beauty the world had no words for, something too bright to belong to a mortal girl. Travelers crossed the sea just to look at her. They threw kisses as they would to a goddess, and in time they began to whisper that Aphrodite herself had been born again in human flesh. So the altars of the goddess of love went cold. Her temples emptied. The offerings that were hers by right were laid at the feet of a mortal girl instead. And the true Aphrodite, watching from above, was seized by a jealousy no goddess could bear. She summoned her son, Eros, whose arrows make gods and mortals fall helplessly in love. She showed him the girl who had stolen her worship and gave him her cruelest command: make this creature burn with love for the vilest, most wretched thing that crawls upon the earth. But the curse had already begun to turn against her. For though every man alive worshipped Psyche from afar, not one of them dared to ask for her hand. She was admired like a painted statue and courted by nobody until the most beautiful girl in the world came to hate the very beauty the whole world praised. Her father, in despair, climbed to the oracle of Apollo to ask what husband the gods intended for her, and the answer came back like a sentence of death: no mortal would be her groom. The oracle spoke of a winged serpent thing that flies on wings of fire, feared even by Zeus and the rivers of the dead. Dress her for a funeral, it said, and leave her on the high crag. So they dressed Psyche in robes that were both a bride's and a corpse's, and led her up the mountain in a wedding procession that wept like a funeral, and left her alone on the rock. But no monster came. Instead, the soft west wind, Zephyrus, gathered her up off the crag as gently as if she weighed nothing, and carried her down into a deep green valley on a bed of flowers. When she woke and walked a little way, she found a palace of gold, golden columns, walls carved with silver beasts, jeweled floors, a house plainly built by a god standing open for her. Voices with no bodies spoke to her kindly. Unseen hands bathed and dressed her. Music played from empty air, and a banquet spread itself before her, and all of it, they said, was hers. And when night came and the lamps went out, her husband came to her in the dark. She never saw him. He was gentle and loving, and there in the blackness he made her his wife. He came every night in the dark and was gone before dawn. And he laid on her one law above all others: you must never try to see my face, for if you look on me, you will lose me forever. She was happy, a bride in the golden house beloved, and soon she knew she carried his child. But all day she was alone in the silent palace and began to grieve for her sisters. She wept and pleaded until, against his own warning, her husband allowed it. They will try to make you look at me, he told her in the dark. If you listen to them, you are lost. So Zephyrus carried the two elder sisters down into the Golden Valley. But the moment they saw the palace and the invisible servants and wealth their own kings could not dream of, their love curdled. They embraced her and smiled and hid it well. But behind their eyes a poison was already brewing, and they meant to have what she had, or to see her lose it. They pried at her, "What does your husband look like?" And Psyche, who had never seen him, stumbled. First he was a young hunter, then a gray-haired merchant, and the sisters caught the lie at once. They came again with their poison ready. "Have you forgotten the oracle?" they hissed. "A monstrous serpent visits you in the dark. It is fattening you and the child in your belly, only to swallow you both. Save yourself," they told her. "Hide a covered lamp and a sharp knife beside the bed. Wait until the beast is deep in sleep. Then bring the light close and cut through its neck and be free." and fear did its patient work. The doubt they had planted grew and grew, until that night, trembling and hating herself, Psyche hid the lamp and the blade beneath the bed and waited for the dark. She lay beside her sleeping husband in the blackness and listened, her heart loud in her ears, until his breathing slowed and deepened, and she knew that he was fast asleep. Then she rose. She lifted the lamp from its hiding place, drew the knife, and leaned out over the sleeping shape to look at last on the monster she had married, and to kill it. And the light fell on his face. There was no monster. Asleep in the golden bed lay the loveliest being she had ever seen. Golden-haired, white-winged, Eros himself, the god of love, her husband all along. The knife nearly turned in her hand against her own heart for shame. And there, at the foot of the bed, lay his weapons, the golden bow and the quiver of arrows that make the whole world love. Wondering, she drew out one arrow to marvel at it, and pressed her thumb to the point, so a bead of blood welled up. And in that instant, she fell hopelessly in love with Love himself. She bent to kiss him, and the lamp trembling in her hand let fall a single drop of its burning oil onto the god's bare shoulder. He woke. He saw the flame and the knife and the terror on her face, and understood everything, that she had meant to kill him, that the trust between them was broken. And without a word of anger, only a terrible sorrow, he rose. Love, he told her, cannot live where there is suspicion. And he spread his great white wings. She flung herself at him and caught hold of his leg and was dragged up into the cold night air, clinging with all her strength until her arms failed and she fell back to the earth. From a cypress branch, he told her the truth. My own mother sent me to destroy you, he said. I loved you instead, defied her, and pierced myself to make you my wife. This is my reward. Then he was gone, and Psyche, alone in a world she had lost, walked to the edge of a river and threw herself in, wanting only to die. But the water feared the god she had wronged, and would not take her. It set her gently on the bank, and there old Pan, piping among the reeds, told her not to die, but to win the god of love back by patience and prayer. First, she paid the sisters who had ruined her. She went to each in turn and told her sweetly that Eros had cast Psyche out and now desired to take her instead as his bride. And each greedy sister ran to the crag and threw herself into the air, calling for Zephyrus to carry her to the golden bed. But the wind did not come, and each of them fell and broke on the rocks below. Then Psyche wandered the world searching for her husband and found no shelter anywhere, for neither Demeter nor Hera would dare to hide a girl from the wrath of Aphrodite. Having nowhere left in all the world to run, she did the only thing left to do. She walked into the house of the goddess who hated her most and gave herself up. Aphrodite laughed and had her beaten and mocked, and then to break her, she set a chain of tasks that no mortal alive could hope to finish. First, a whole mountain of mixed seeds, wheat and barley, millet and poppy, lentils and beans, poured together in one vast heap, every grain to be sorted into its own kind by nightfall. She sat down in despair, certain she would fail, and then the ground stirred. An army of ants poured out of the earth and sorted the whole mountain into neat heaps before the light was gone. Next, a hank of wool from the golden sheep of the sun, savage rams with fleeces of gold that gore and trample any who come near them in the blazing heat of the day. But a green reed by the river whispered, "Wait until evening, when the sun's fury cools and the rams sleep, then gather the gold wool they leave caught on the brambles." And so she did, unharmed. Next, a jar of black water from the spring of the Styx, which falls from the top of a sheer cliff crawling with dragons and feeds the cold rivers of the dead. As she stood helpless beneath it, the eagle of Zeus, who owed the god of love an old debt, swept down, took the crystal jar in its talons, and flew up through the coiling dragons to fill it for her. And last, the worst task of all, go down into the land of the dead itself and beg from Persephone, queen of the underworld, a box full of her own divine beauty. Certain this was simply a command to die, she climbed a high tower to throw herself off and be done, and the tower itself spoke and told her the whole secret road. Carry 2 coins for Charon, it said, and 2 honeyed cakes for the 3-headed hound. Refuse every cry for pity on the road, and whatever else you do, do not open the box. And Psyche did all of it. She paid the ferryman, quieted the hound, passed every trap of pity, and stood at last before the pale queen of the dead, who filled the box and sent her back toward the light. But on the long road back toward the daylight, her oldest flaw rose in her one last time: curiosity. A little of this divine beauty, she thought, just a touch to make myself lovely again for the husband I lost. She opened the box, and there was no beauty inside at all, only sleep, a black, deathly Stygian sleep, which rushed out and seized her, and she dropped in the road, still as a corpse. But this time, love came for her. Eros, healed at last of his burn and escaped from his mother's house, saw her fallen and flew to where she lay as still as death. He gathered the sleep from her face and shut it back in the box. He woke her with the harmless touch of an arrow and gently scolded the curiosity that had nearly killed her a second time. He sent her on to carry the box the last of the way, and he himself flew up to the halls of heaven, to Zeus, king of the gods, and begged for the one thing he wanted above all. And Zeus, amused and moved, and glad to see the troublesome archer humbled by love at last granted it, he called all the gods together into the shining halls of Olympus. Before them all, he declared the marriage of Eros and Psyche lawful, unbreakable, and eternal, a bond no goddess's anger could ever undo again. Then he took a cup of ambrosia, the drink of the deathless gods, and put it into the hands of the mortal girl. "Drink, Psyche," he said, "and be immortal." And she drank, and the soul that had been mortal became a goddess, raised up among the deathless ones to stand beside the god who loved her. Aphrodite's long anger melted away at last, and at the wedding feast in heaven, even she, the goddess who had begun it all in jealousy, danced. And to love and the soul, married now forever among the gods, there was born in time a daughter, and they gave her a fitting name. They called her Pleasure. That is the tale an old woman once told to comfort a frightened bride, that a soul may be cursed and doomed and abandoned and still be loved to the very end. And this is what it means. Psyche is the human soul, its beauty and its loneliness, its love received and doubted and lost, its long trial and its little death. The soul's undoing and the soul's rescue are the very same thing. The need to know, to see, to be certain. It ruins her twice, and it is also the reaching that finally lifts her to the divine. Strangely, this whole story reaches us through a single ancient book, a Roman novel, though love and the soul themselves are far older, carved together on Greek stone, long before anyone wrote it down. And so the great age of mortals goes on, of lovers and heroes who dare to reach toward the gods, and of the wonder and the ruin that come whenever the two worlds touch. The soul was cursed, and doubted, and lost what it loved, and was married in the end, past every mistake to the thing it could not stop reaching for. And somewhere above the world, love walks beside the soul, unafraid of the dark at last. Thank you for watching. If this tale stayed with you, subscribe. A new myth arrives every week, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Until then, may the old stories keep their hold on you.